Cruising on the Mikhail Lermontov was an adventure more exotic than just sparkling waters. Passengers were served a cocktail of traditional Russia, spiced with Soviet communism, topped off with secret police.
It's a good service, it's a Russian style on board, Russian service, Russian food. We try to show for the passenger Russian style.
I mean, this was one wonderful selling point as far as the ships were concerned, because everybody knew about Russia, knew about the KGB, and here's an opportunity to actually get a taste, you know, a little taste of this communism. Before I joined the company, you know, you think to yourself, I'm working with the Russians and it's the KGB, and what's it going to be like? And then you're so surprised when you get on that it didn't interfere with anything at all, because they were only there to make sure that the crew and the officers stayed within the limitations of communism.
The journey to disaster started on a fine day in New Zealand's capital city, Wellington. During the Lermontov's last major stopover, pilot Dawn Jameson boarded the ship. At midnight, she steamed out of the harbour for the Marlborough Sounds. For 16 years, Jameson was Marlborough's only pilot, guiding hundreds of ships down the long fjord to the port at Picton. This time, a decision he has never explained in public proved the biggest mistake of an otherwise quiet life.
Captain Jameson is a very upright man. He's honest, straightforward, great family man, very thorough in his profession, a good seafaring man.
Jameson loves the Marlborough Sounds. He lives there still. His spare time is spent boating and fishing in deep waters around the maze of islands and inlets. He has always been passionate about promoting his home to the world. Nestled quietly at the head of Queen Charlotte Sound, the tiny town of Picton was the Lermontov's last stop before steaming out into the open sea. Ray and Lorna Lane took their grandsons John and Stephen on the cruise as a special treat.
Picton, we arrived there about 6 o'clock in the morning, breakfast at 6:30, departed about 7:30 on a coach to Blenheim, which was very pretty. But there we had morning tea, biscuits, scones, cream cakes, which the two boys
enjoyed.
Made a guts of themselves. Got back to Picton, had our lunch about 1:30.
After midday, the Lermontov crew were hosting a traditional reception for the harbour board. The nature of their hospitality later became a very controversial point.
I went down with the harbour master at the time, Captain Dawn Jameson, and we met the captain, some of the officers, and exchanged pleasantries, and then he asked us if we'd like to stay for lunch. I can't remember what we ate, but they did shout us a couple of glasses of wine, and I think I left the vessel about 2:30.
Jameson accepted 3 drinks at the reception, but drank no alcohol at lunch. In fact, he was said to be joining the cruise with his wife. After piloting the vessel, the rest of the trip to Australia was his holiday.
The Captain Jameson ordered to prepare for him and his wife as a good cabin. When the vessel arrived in Picton, he arrived on board without wife. I don't know why.
Shortly after 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, the Lermontov left port for the very last time. The captain and the pilot talked about their route. Vorobyov then placed his faith and the navigation of the vessel in Jameson's hands.
This is the usual practice on board a Russian vessel. We discussed our plan, but we did not know the exactly route of the vessel, because we planned ordinary passage It's not a cruising.
Vorobyov had agreed that the New Zealander would treat passengers to some sightseeing on the route through the Sounds. He didn't know that passengers already had premonitions about the trip.
One of the ladies we were travelling with, she had a dream the night before we arrived at Picton that the ship had sailed into an aircraft-like hangar and sunk. And when we arrived in Picton and we all hopped off the boat, and Pat says, "That's the hangar." And it was this, we all went, "Oh, wow, is that the hangar?" She said, "That's the hangar in my dream." And we all thought, "Oh, that's a bit eerie." But one of the conversations with Pat's dream, of course, was, what would you take if we sunk? And so we're all having a good old giggle. "Oh, we've got to take your sunglasses in case the sun comes. We need a hat, better take some sunscreen as well. And we better take some bourbon, or we better grab the smokes as well, and maybe a blanket in case it gets cold."
This strange omen was echoed by a series of incidents that unsettled passengers and crew. Just moments after casting off, the Lermontov sailed unusually close to shore.
It seemed to back out of the wharf at Picton, and it went round and went back. The back part of it seemed to hit a sandbank like the shore. Now, not for long, just a couple of minutes, and then the engines reversed and it took off and it was okay.
When the ship was leaving Picton, I looked out and saw that for some reason the shore was close to its stern. It was so close to the shore. I'd never seen a ship that close.
The Mikhail Lermontov continued to hug the coastline as the pilot began showing off the splendor of the Sounds.
We were passing a bay, and Pilot Jameson turned into a guide and began talking through the loudspeakers about what we were seeing and describing the historical monuments and beauty of the area.
One of the first historic sites was a wrecked settler's ship. While taking the huge liner in for a closer look, Jameson slipped on the wet deck and fell, hitting his head, while the ship continued to power closer to shore. On the bridge was New Zealand assistant pilot Gary Neal.
He ordered full astern on both engines, and the ship did eventually pull up very close to the shoreline on the western side of Shakespeare Bay.
It was a moment that the vessel approached too close, was my opinion. Now, but we use bow thruster and engine full astern and maneuvering around.
The indication from the officer on the bow at the time was that we got to within 30 metres of the shoreline.
The ship seemed to have a funny turn, and I was standing there next to some Picton people, and they said, "Goodness, we've never seen a ship do that before."
On that occasion, the bow thruster had been switched off and the ship did not respond as anticipated. There is a well-beaten route out of the Sounds. Cruise ships leaving Picton normally make for the widest channel toward open waters. But on this day, Jameson directed the helmsman into a smaller channel behind Allport's Island. In clearing the island and turning away from the shore, the Lermontov had to make a hard right turn. And for the third time in less than an hour, crew watched the shore looming larger and larger.
Well, we were up on the deck, and I have to say that at one stage it almost felt like you could put your hand out and touch the land. We just seemed to be so close.
An hour after leaving Picton, there was a crew change, and the next shift arrived on the bridge. Captain Vorobyov discussed the sightseeing plan with the pilot and the new officers. Half an hour later, Vorobyov went below to change his rain-soaked uniform, leaving Chief Officer Stepanyichev in command. Buren was at the helm, steering to orders given by Jameson. This single decision to leave the bridge, no matter how reasonable, destroyed the captain's career.
According to the Russian Fleet Standing Order, the chief officer has equal right an equal responsibility with the master. I have a right not to be on the bridge because there was a chief officer duty at that time with the full responsibility.
With 9 kilometers between the ship and the open sea, Jameson pushed her up to full cruising speed. The Lermontovs should be clear of the Sound in less than an hour.